So, the witch is familiar.
How familiar is she?
Spoilers.
He pauses to allow you time to click away in case you don't want spoilers. And he resumes.
Well, as I suspected and predicted last week, everything we saw at the end of The Magician's Assistant was fake. Fraud, horse turds. Spoilers, surprise! Missy and Clara were not exterminated. The TARDIS was not vaporized, and the Doctor did not go back in time to murder little boy Davros. Prizes to Michael Tannock, who guessed that Missy and Clara escaped the Daleks by means of Missy's vortex manipulator, and to Freeze, who guessed that the Doctor went back in time to zap the hand mines in order to rescue little boy Davros. Let it be said, however, lying in a cliffhanger is not a sin. That's just how cliffhangers work, going all the way back to the silent movie era. Here's an example. This is from the 1940s, King of the Rocket Men. The bad guy is steering the car by remote control. This is a gag that was used in practically every movie serial of the era. The famous car over the cliff gag. There it is, car goes over the cliff and explodes. Our hero must be dead. Then the following week, we come back and what do we learn? A replay of the same action. This time, there are a couple of extra shots. Surprise! They jumped out of the car before it went over. Exactly the same escape as Missy and Clara, except without a vortex manipulator. But while Missy, Clara, and the TARDIS all survived, apparently one of the Doctor's most iconic prompts did not. It appears that the Doctor has abandoned the sonic screwdriver in favor of the Gallifreyan Google Glass. What? That's just nuts. Just nuts. Abandon a signature prop, something that belongs only to the Doctor? Only to the Doctor in the whole world of fantasy and science fiction? And what does the Doctor put on in his place? Really? Generic hipster shades? Why? Maybe Moffat owns shares in Ray-Ban. What happens now to all these pages and pages of merchandising on Amazon? Oh well, they're still selling these. And these. Loss of the sonic screwdriver notwithstanding, this episode, The Witch is Familiar, is as good as the show ever gets. Same writer and director as last week, Stephen Moffat, Hettie MacDonald. But I rate this week's show even higher than part one. For one thing, it was much deeper emotionally. And for another, it was all built around a single theme. In Missy's words, the enemy inside the friend inside the enemy. Every one of the subplots was a commentary on that main theme, and the show was exceptionally well plotted with twists upon twists, double crosses upon double crosses, and the Doctor's goodness triumphant in the end. Missy's uniquely giddy brand of evil sunk to new depths in this episode. Her lack of any moral compass and her insistence on tormenting the Doctor whenever possible means she may at any point do anything. It was Missy who brought the Doctor and Clara together in the first place, and yet, when she finds an opportunity to try and trick the Doctor into killing Clara, the temptation is too much for her to resist. And once again, she gets all the best lines, including a cheeky explanation of why the Master regenerated as a woman, while the Doctor keeps coming back as a man. He couldn't afford the upgrade. A rich script from Michelle Gomez, and she is superb in it. Jenna Coleman spends nearly the entire episode trussed up, or chained to a wall, or locked inside a Dalek. No wonder she's quitting the show. The Doctor's confrontation with Davros hits emotional notes that the two have never come near before. These two foes, who have been battling for centuries, open up to each other as Davros is dying. Moffat loves to play with echoes and callbacks. Here he has the Doctor taking a spin in Davros' chair, and he has Davros asking, "Am I a good man?" The very question the Doctor asked all through Series 8. The two of them spar like old enemies, and then they connect like old friends. As the Doctor and Davros share their histories, they seem to reach a genuinely mournful emotional intimacy, with strong empathy one for the other. They're almost like two generals from opposing sides meeting years after a long war has ended. No longer enemies, they discover how much they have in common. Except, of course, the war is not over, and it turns out both Davros and the Doctor were faking it, each one double-crossing the other. Fine writing from the two actors, Peter Capaldi and Julian Bleach, and really fine acting. Moffat continues to mine the 52-year history of the show for old and new gems, filling blanks wherever he finds them. New Dalek lore, chanting "Exterminate, exterminate" is how they recharge their weapons. More new Dalek lore, their outer shells translate any positive emotions into negative ones. And still more new Dalek lore, when they age, they don't die. They degenerate into a mess of sentient, resentful sewer sludge. They literally turn into angry poo. It's not exactly clear whether for a Dalek that constitutes heaven or hell. Moffat exploits his peculiar notion of the Dalek afterlife in his own variation of Chekhov's gun. Never put sentient Dalek sludge on stage in Act 1 unless you activate it in Act 3. Sewage ex machina. Not only learn about new Dalek lore, also learn more about the Time Lord, the Doctor. Moffat has come up with some bits that the Doctor has so far managed to keep secret throughout the long 52-year history of the show. We've known, for example, the Doctor stole his TARDIS and fled his native planet. But we have never learned exactly why. Davros presses him on the point, and I flash back to Claude Rains as Captain Renault talking to Humphrey Bogart's Rick in Casablanca. I've often speculated why you don't return to America. Did you abscond with the church funds? Run off with the senator's wife? I'd like to think you killed a man. It's the romantic in me. Well, Rick doesn't open up to Renault, and the Doctor doesn't open up to Davros on that point. But it does put a marker on the board for a possible future plot thread. Maybe Moffat will follow up on a future episode and tell us why the Doctor did leave Gallifrey. Doctor does volunteer this much to his archenemy. Gallifrey is still out there somewhere. Will we see Davros and the Daleks go looking for the lost planet of the Time Lords? Another possible thread for future stories, we hear about an ancient Gallifrey legend foretelling of a hybrid warrior race. And for a while, it looks as though we're at the point of creating that race, Time Lord and Dalek, as the Doctor begins infusing regeneration energy into Davros and all the Daleks. Missy puts a stop to that, but now the legend is out on the table, waiting for it to happen, and our last glimpse of Missy had her surrounded by Daleks, telling them she had a plan. Now, I want to confess I had mixed feelings when I learned that this series would be built around two-parters. Here's why I like the idea. In many cases, I found the single episodes were just too crammed with plot for their own good. The stories were rushed, sometimes confusing, and scenes were undeveloped. Emotional impact was skimped. But with two-parters, there's time for a much clearer and richer storytelling. Here's what I was concerned about, though. Would they be able to make part 2 of each pair actually live up to or surpass its part 1? Now, maybe it's too early to answer that for the series, but so far, so wonderful. Bring on more two-parters. Until next time, I'm Mickeleh. DVD Extras. As much as the audience is going to welcome two-part episodes, I'll bet the accountants welcome them even more. Look at how much money they're saving, amortizing most of the sets over 2 episodes instead of 1. This week, only the Dalek sewer was a new set, and there were no location shoots, and half the cast from part 1 didn't come back for part 2. Another extra for you. One of this episode's Dalek performers, Pegg, has not only operated a Dalek throughout the modern era, appearing in 14 episodes so far. Well, not exactly appearing. He's also a very active performer and director in the Big Finish audio series, as is the voice of the Daleks and the Cybermen, Briggs. 2 other notes about Pegg. He wrote the definitive book on the life and career of David Bowie, and he put up a politically wicked parody of the shipping forecast that went viral last year. See a link in the description. Here is a playlist of some of the other reviews of this episode that I think are worth your time. I have Darren Locke, Barry Aldridge, Nerd Life, and Digital Spy. Any others? Leave a comment. I'll add them to the playlist. And here, that's my review of part 1 of this adventure of Doctor Who, The Magician's Apprentice. Bye now.